live in a very consumption-based society.
So what are the problems that mostly people come up to you, especially men?
All gathered for a personal transformation program. And we are doing an exercise called Free Our Inner Animal.
Especially men.
So you go to someone and you say, here's some money, please solve my problem.
Right.
I am passing on my problem to you. Now you're responsible to give me
solve
the
my
solution.
People say, when you're making money and at the same time you are happy, you are one of the luckiest guy. Because most of the people, when they're in the process of making money, they miss happiness.
Indian mythology, we talk about like masculine, feminine energy in a very different way to what people talk about in the West.
Mm-hmm.
You know, yin yang, Ardhanareshwar we talk about. You know,
Right.
so that is so one big piece is that we all have masculine and feminine energies inside of us.
Right.
You can't do that in relationships, I'm afraid.
Hi Kapil.
Hey.
Nice to meet you. You as a person graduated from one of the finest university, been in the corporate life for initial career, and then later you started your life as a relationship coach or self-help coach, right? So how is this switch happened initially?
Wow.
To
We're
talk into your
diving
journey.
deep straight away. Okay.
Yeah.
So a couple of things happened. Around 2010, I went through a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big thing, you know, because coming from Indian culture, I grew up in India. I moved to the UK in about 2000, around that time.
Right.
So my ideas of a marriage was, you know, you get married for life, you know, and that's how I looked at it.
Right. Yeah.
Around 2010, after we were together for 11 years, the marriage broke down.
Yeah.
And that had a huge impact on me. It's like
Yeah.
I had this question as to why that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, things are different now in India, but when I was growing up, you never hear about divorces.
Divorce.
It was
That's
a big
the big
thing in
thing.
India back then, right?
Yeah.
So when I was going through this relationship breakdown, I felt like a loser pretty much. Like, why did this happen?
Yeah.
So that was one thing. And then I used to live in Edinburgh, finished my MBA from University of Edinburgh and moved to London. And after a couple of years in London, I got to this place where I felt like I had ticked most of the boxes I was planning to tick in my life. And I was only about 35.
In corporate life.
In corporate life, you know,
Okay.
like I grew up in a small town, India,
Yeah.
you know, near Nainital. And I still remember when I was growing up, like one day, if I had 1 lakh rupees,
That would be a huge thing.
life
Massive
would be great, you know?
Yeah.
And here I was living in central London, right next to the Thames in Waterloo.
Yeah.
I was making more money than I knew what I could do with it. I had been through a relationship, a marriage. I was living, you know, abroad.
Good life. Pretty good life. Yeah.
So it's like everything that I thought I needed to tick
Came into picture.
in terms of like having a great life,
Good money.
growing up in India, success, achievement. I was, you know, a product innovations director for a multinational company.
Wow.
Had my MBA degree from one of the best universities in the world. So it was like, okay, I have achieved everything. What's next? So those are the two things, you know, I think relationship breakdown and getting to a point in life where I thought I had ticked all the boxes, and I was like,
What's next?
What is the next thing I need to do? And I had this realization that I wasn't very happy in my life. I wasn't feeling very fulfilled in my life.
Right.
I had this thing at the back of my soul where it's like I couldn't touch at the back of my soul. You know what? You know, I don't know if you felt that way, but
Some things give fulfillment. So
Yeah.
it's finding the fulfillment, right?
yeah, I was like, I have everything, but why
There's no
does it
fulfillment.
feel like there's something missing?
Mm-hmm.
And I also knew that I could keep going the way I was going.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe 10 years down the line, I would have achieved a lot more. I would have maybe doubled a lot of the things. I would have gone through similar experiences again and again.
Mm-hmm.
But the mystery from life was missing. I had this thing, it's like, if this is how the rest of my life is going to be,
It's
going
not
to be
going
pretty
to be
boring.
It's never going to be
You
fully.
know?
Yeah,
It's
understood.
So
Right.
that's what really brought me to just experimenting, exploring a lot of different ways. I was like, what else is out there? I would look at some people who looked really happy,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh,
Why these
what
people
do
are
they
very
have?
happy?
What do I need to get this kind of fulfillment and happiness in my life? So that's how my journey started in personal transformation.
Going through your journey, you have a very interesting journey. You led monastic life for 6 years, and then immediately after coming through that, then you transformed as a coach, right? If I'm not wrong.
So when I say monastic life, it wasn't like typical monastic life
You're
in
going
the
to
terms
some
of like
hills
living in
or-
ashram and living in a cave.
Right.
When I say monastic life, it was a life dedicated to practices,
Okay.
and monastic in a sense that it was dedicated to living life, which was very much about connection. So what happened back in 2012, I was looking for like different kind of embodied practices. I went through an experience where someone said, "Oh, you should look at like body-based practices," and I didn't know. I was like a typical corporate dude,
Yeah.
very heady. If you asked me what connection is, I didn't know. If you asked me what empathy is, I had no idea.
Right.
You know, a computer science kind of a dude.
It's all.
Then I went deep into this practice-based life, and I was living in a community. So that's why I call it a monastic
Right.
life, because it is
Still
very
you're
much
going
like
through
a
same routine every day.
disciplined, practice-based life for about 6 years.
Great.
And I also started a business teaching that practice to a lot of people, working with people in similar sort of life.
So what's the learnings after you led that life for 6 years straight? So what are the outcomes that you can see?
You just want give me the outcomes. I would say that we live a lot of our life in our head. And especially, I think your audience is young.
Mostly young.
People who are on the path of striving, looking for success, looking for achievement.
Looking for money,
Looking
good
for
lifestyle,
money,
good cars.
lifestyle, which is what my lifestyle was
Used to be.
for a long time. And I realized that usually what happens is that we are told by our parents, by this culture, by society, that once you do all these things, you will make it in life, and at the end of it, you'll be happy. And sorry to disappoint you, but that's not how it works. That's what I found.
That's the reality.
What I found, and which I think in all of our Indian spiritual traditions, we say karm kiye ja phal ki ichha mat kar, right? It is a very simple text, but I think ultimately that's what's true. You have to learn how to live in every moment. You have to learn how to appreciate and find joy in every moment. And what happens when you do that is that when you actually get to a place where you are successful, you have achieved everything, you don't realize that, oh, I've got to this place, now I need to be happy. You find joy in every moment, and then when you get there, your entire life has been about happiness, as opposed to this one goal that you get to. It's like, oh, I've made 10 million pounds. When you are in that mindset, what happens is that you get there, you make 10 million pounds.
You
You probably will.
Mm.
But then as soon as you make 10 million pounds, you'll be like, oh, now I've got 10 million. Now I need to make 100 million. So you're always chasing. You're always chasing the goal. You're never able to really enjoy anything.
That's why the people say, when you're making money and at the same time you are happy, you are one of the luckiest guy. Because most of the people, when they're in the process of making money, they miss happiness. And I don't know how true it is. I can only tell until when I'm in that stage, right? But this is what I say. So you personally coach a lot of people, right? Probably people who have achieved a lot of things in life. Probably CEOs and executives, some high-profile people. So what are the problems that mostly people come up to you, especially men? Because you speak about men a lot, right? Especially successful men, if I talk about, what are the problems or situations or complaints that they come up with, and then they say, I'm in this stage of life, I need some sort of solution, I'm missing something in life, or else, I need more clarity on this side of life, or things like that?
Yeah, really good question. If I was to think about it, there is not one
particular thing.
But usually
Mhm.
the underlying
Most of the time, yeah.
thing is usually similar. But people come to me quite often who've had a similar journey to mine.
Right.
Like they have been on this successful path of success, striving. They've made it in careers, either in the corporate world, they are successful,
And whatever the
mid-senior
things they're
level,
doing, yeah.
managers, or at high level of success in their career, or they're entrepreneurs
Right.
who've also spent 10, 12, 15 years
Working like-
on that journey of success and have achieved money, have achieved fame up to some extent. But they all come to the point where it's like, I've worked really hard. I have everything,
Right.
but I don't know, like I feel stuck in life. I have a sense of dread in my life. Or my relationships are not working. Or I'm going through motions in life, but I don't feel fulfilled or happy. Generally speaking, those are the kind of queries people have. Or there are things around relationships. So it's like, oh, my, I have everything, but my relationship is not great.
Not going well.
Here's the thing. Everything in life is connected. If we have an issue in one area of our life, it ends up affecting every other area of our life as well. So it doesn't matter if you're having problem in your career. It will have an impact on your relationship,
Personal life.
for example, with your family, with whatever kind of relationship you're in, with your colleagues at work, and inside in your personal life as well, because everything is connected. So I get, sometimes it's things like, oh, I don't have a great sort of relationship within my team in the business, which also shows up in because it's human connection. If you're not good at conflict at work, it's likely that you're not great at conflict
at home.
in your relationship.
So you're saying a person can't be saying, I'm not good at my job, I don't like my job, or I'm having problems with my career and stuff, but I'm like very good with my family, friends, and other sort of relationships.
It's a good question for people to ask themselves. We say, like you do one thing, like you do everything. So if you have an underlying way of responding to one thing in your life, I can almost guarantee that is how you show up in every other area of your life as well.
So
here's an example.
Yeah, please.
I used to be a conflict avoidant. I would, anytime there was a conflict, I would run away from it.
Okay. You don't like
and
to
I know
face.
a lot of people like that, right? But that meant that I couldn't tolerate conflict in my relationships. And at the same time, I couldn't tolerate conflict with my boss or with my colleagues at work or outside on the street. Anytime there was a conflict, I would try and avoid it. So it's like, that is how I showed up everywhere in my life.
Okay, so what's the transformation process like? When these people come up to you and say that, right? I'm missing fulfillment.
Yeah.
And I'm missing some sort of thing in my life, right? After they achieve a lot through financially or like career-wise, how do you make sure that they start their journey of self-discovery or their part to find something which makes them happier? How is this transformation process happens, and then how do you make them guide initially? What do you kind of look at when usually people walk up to you?
I would say the first thing is willingness.
Right.
I can't help anyone.
Unless they're willing to change or...
Even when they're willing to change, a lot of the time, I think when people look at coaching or therapy or any kind of soft skill type thing, there's a key difference in how you look at it. Because we are used to other people solving our problems. We live in a very consumption-based society. So you go to someone and you say, here's some money, please solve my problem.
Right.
I am passing on my problem to you. Now you're responsible to give me the solution because you're a service-based business. Provide the service and you'll solve my problem.
Great.
You can't do that in relationships, I'm afraid.
I think human is sort of my relationship is right. It's true.
Right?
Yeah.
So the thing is, first of all, you've got to know that you are ready to do the work.
Right.
And it's hard. Why? Because it will confront everything you've done so far in your life.
It.
The way you look at life, you will have to look at it in a 180-degree different way. Right? Because here, you're actually paying someone to tell you what to do, but you will have to ultimately do the work.
At the end of the day. Right. Yeah.
Right? It's like if you're a sports person, you get a coach, he will tell you if you play
How to
cricket,
do,
it's like
yeah.
ultimately you've got to change your stance. Ultimately you have to put in the work to change yourself, right? So that's the first thing. You have to have the willingness. Now after that, what I have come to realize is there's 4 or 5 different areas that I've broken down my own experience. So the first thing is what I like to say, any kind of self-awareness. So understanding everything about your own life, how you've got to where you've got to in your life. What are your belief systems? What do you think is true but might not be true? So for example, growing up in India, mostly everywhere, I think men have a certain kind of thinking.
Societal expectations.
When I was growing up, and I talk about that in my TEDx talk, for example, is that, when I was growing up, there was this very specific way boys were treated. It's like, don't show emotions. Don't show sensitivity. Don't show vulnerability. Because the world doesn't want boys to be a certain way, right?
To be weak, basically.
Right. So you've got to know what your belief system is like. There's other fundamental things. I think one of the things I've found is that most people don't understand their boundaries. We're never taught that we can actually have boundaries. Especially in India, I think we have a very codependent society because we have like a culture where we live in big families. It's changing, but still, I think it's very much a very codependent society.
I think it's so much of comparison between each other, right?
Not even comparison, but there is the kind of emotional blackmail that we have in Indian culture that is off the chart.
Right.
So we use care as a way to go into codependence a lot. So I think understanding that is like, where do I stop and the other person starts? Can I actually say yes and no to someone? When do I say yes to people when I actually mean to say no? When do I say no when I actually mean to say yes? So that is all down to boundaries. Then the other part of it, the whole self-awareness piece is what I like to call victim consciousness or drama triangle. It's like when I live my life, do I think that I'm a victim of the society? Or do I think that life is happening for me? Is it happening to me or is it happening for me?
Right.
So there's so that's one big area around self-awareness. Who am I? Understanding everything about, what makes this person, what makes this identity. So taking all the layers off, that is one big part. Then the second part is what I like to call practices. I am a firm believer in creating a discipline of practices around, say, self-inquiry, around, we say that, when we go into any kind of workshop, we get to see a sense of what is possible for us.
Right.
But we don't then follow up on it, right? We just come out of the workshop and suddenly we're like, this is me now. This is me, a new person.
Get some kind of motivation and then just leave it.
Right. So when you get motivation, that is what we call peak experiences. But what you have to do is then build in the discipline to become the person you saw when you were in the workshop.
Right.
And that comes with practices. So whatever kind of practices you have, but you have to have a self-discipline around your practices, a daily or weekly, whatever you want, whatever works for you, but you've got to have a discipline on that. So that's the second part
Second
of
part
my
of it.
how I work. The third thing is, and you'll probably recognize this, and your audience will too, is that when we talk about developing skill set, we usually develop skills that are external skills. You know, we go to university, we learn something, intellectual stuff, we develop soft skills, but it's all about how we show up in the world. But we never develop skills that are internal.
Inside.
So like, for instance, emotional
most of the
intelligence,
time.
I talk about a big one.
Most of it, yeah.
Building empathy, emotional regulation, how to thrive in conflict, how to have communication that is generative, how to work with energy, for example. So those are a lot of inner skills
It needs to be practiced.
that needs to be practiced. So, you know, in our Indian mythology, we talk about like masculine, feminine energy in a very different way to what people talk about in the West. You know, yin yang, ardhanareshwar we talk about, you know.
Right.
So that is, so one big piece is that we all have masculine and feminine energies inside of us.
Right.
Right? So how do we create a balance between those two inside? So those are inner skills we develop.
Right.
And then the final part that I like to talk about is moving away from this idea that we have to win or lose at everything. So moving away from this finite, there's this author called James P. Cars who talks about finite and infinite games. So how do we move from life as finite game to an idea that life is an infinite game? As in, we're not here to win or lose, but we are here to play the game of life. And everything else in life, live life in that way as well.
Great.
So I've just given you everything that I've learned.
Yeah. Four steps that you usually evaluate the way the person wants to transform themselves, right?
So I pick and choose, you know, depending on who...
At the end, it depends on the person, right? How he grown up, or what's his career, what's his strengths, what's his weakness, where he's suffering most, and all these things. I know. So one thing that you pointed out, emotional intelligence, right? So nowadays, especially in 21st century, and because of advancement in the technology, emotional intelligence is almost like a superpower.
Yeah.
Almost like a superpower. And people who have emotional intelligence are becoming good in all walks of life, personal, professional. And if you look at the most of the CEOs and very highly successful people, they're the one thing that they train themselves is to be emotionally intelligent. Don't make decisions when they're emotionally too high. I mean, don't make wrong decisions. Be intelligent, right? Even the emotions are flowing through. So how do you say, like, you know, emotional intelligence is such a important skill for a young guy to develop? How one should master that when he's young?
Great question. I would say no matter what work you do, you work with people. Right? Mostly. I mean, unless you're
100%.
sitting... Even if you're sitting at your computer most of the time and you're just coding, sometime you will talk to people. Even
you must communicate in one way or the way, right?
You sell, you're talking to people. You're project managing, you're talking to people. You're in office, you're talking to people. You're in a team, you're talking to people. Your boss, your husband, wife,
everything. We want to buy something, we're talking to people.
Everything in life is about people.
Talking with the people, yes.
And emotional intelligence ultimately is about two things. Your relationship to yourself and your relationship with people.
Right.
So there are 4 parts to emotional intelligence, right? Self-awareness, which is actually about developing empathy, self-empathy.
Right.
Then the second part is emotional regulation. And this is one of the things that is widely misunderstood. So when we talk about emotional regulation, what people think it is suppression. It's like, oh, I have strong emotions, so I need to put them away and still continue to act or keep doing what I'm doing. That's not what emotional regulation is. Emotional regulation is developing presence in such a way that if I'm angry, I don't have to suppress my emotions, but I can take a breather. I can take a pause. I have enough presence and attention that I can respond as opposed to react. which comes only if you have developed empathy well
Right.
for yourself and for other people. Third part is social awareness. So when I am in public with other people, where is my attention? Is my attention on my problems, or is my attention on what's happening around me?
us. Mm-hmm.
How are you feeling today, Narendra? Can I tune into your system
Mm-hmm.
and like be an empath in that way? Or am I just continuously thinking about my problems? What am I going to do? What am I going to get out of this thing?
And yeah.
So social awareness, everything that's happening around me, and that comes from developing attention.
Right.
If you keep cultivating attention, you will get to a point where you'll be aware of what's happening in your surroundings all the time. So that's social awareness. The final piece is relationship management. And that is where you get to learn how to be in resonant to people around you, how to develop relationship, how to be in conflict, how to sort of build rapport with people who you are with.
Right.
And that is same with, in terms of your work context, but also with your family and friends and in your relationship as well. It's all about building relationship, managing relationship with people. How do you create a win-win scenario?
Right.
So all of that comes under emotional management. Emotional intelligence, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it is, I think, and if you add another element, which is really interesting element right now, is artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence. Mm-hmm.
Artificial intelligence is all about your intellect.
Mm-hmm.
Just imagine, and this is sort of, people might disagree. We have strong opinions about AI usually.
Mm-hmm.
But imagine we do have AI coming up so fast that it will surpass our intelligence at some point.
Yeah, definitely.
And we're almost there, right?
Yeah, almost.
And okay, for foreseeable future, we're saying that, okay, AI is going to be a supplement to our intelligence, and it'll help us, right?
Right.
But I wouldn't be surprised the pace it's going, right? That it will surpass our intelligence. It'll probably end up doing most of the work that we do intellectually.
Intellectually.
So then what is unique about us humans?
Emotions.
Is that we can feel. Is that we have a limbic brain that can tune into what's happening around us and connect us with other people. That is what makes us truly unique. And all of that is related to emotional intelligence. So why do right now, if you go into like any corporate sphere, when people talk about what is the number one skill that'll help us in future, that is emotional intelligence.
Yeah, when you're talking about how there's a one thing to say, people will forget what you did to them, but people will never forget how you made them feel, right?
Yeah.
That's all about emotions.
Totally.
So, like you said previously, person needs to have some strong practices or routines in order to really develop something.
Yeah.
So, what are those routines to adapt in order to build emotional intelligence? If you can tell.
Really good question. I would say the first thing you have to do is to build a practice of self-inquiry.
Mm-hmm.
Questioning your own belief system, your own experience,
Thoughts, beliefs, and
your reactions.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if I say something rude to you, and you become reactive, you get angry, or you get pissed off, or you get sad, then understanding what got triggered inside me.
Right.
What beliefs got triggered? What is the root cause of that? So a self-inquiry practice, usually, it can be journaling, it could be some kind of emotional inventory to understand and break down. It's almost like you're going into your subconscious mind and asking it questions like, why did I get triggered there? What is underneath that? What happened? What are my belief systems that are triggering me? And then ultimately you get to a point where you were like 4 or 5 years old and someone said something to you and you decided, anytime someone said this to me, this is how I'm going to respond. And we're still living in that.
Yeah.
Most of our lives, to be honest, is a projection of the decisions we made when we were like 3 or 4 or 5 years old.
Really?
I can guarantee you.
Okay. Yeah. I think when you talk about this, I remember something. Okay, Shanley. So there is this study.
Sorry. What? Carry on.
Yeah.
We'll
So there is
practices.
this study happened. I mean, this is a scientific
Yeah.
experiment done by Harvard University long time back.
Yeah.
I'm sure you heard about that. So they conducted an experiment giving marshmallows to 3 to 6 year olds. I mean, few of them. They said that they put in front of them, we'll leave those in front of you for 15 minutes, but you can't eat.
Oh yeah.
We'll come back. If you are not eating, we'll give one more. We'll give one more marshmallow.
Yeah.
So the study proved that. So after they came back, few children ate those marshmallows, few didn't eat, right? Few hold back and few hold their desires to eat or whatever, right? So later they checked the same kids after certain age, like after 15 years, 20 years.
Right.
So what happened is the people who didn't eat was succeeded in most walks of life. I mean, compared to these people who had eaten.
Right.
These people chose to delay the gratification.
Yeah.
And then they apparently found they're the same kids who delay the gratification when they were kids. So it's all interlinked. Now let's talk about one important thing, which is stressing the youth most.
Yeah.
Why it is happening. And
What is
are
stressing the youth?
That's where I'm going to come to. That's where I'm going to come to.
Oh, great.
And then how can one be, away from these kind of things, right? When I'm saying stressing the youth means it's like, obviously, most of the people nowadays, according to the study, 4 in 10 adults are suffering from depression.
Yeah.
And most of the youth nowadays are feeling anxious because of, again, societal expectations, emotional distress, work pressure, and so many other things. Right?
Yeah.
And it's happening very often. Youth are being depressed or anxious about so many things, right? How you guide youth to to be to take it as it comes, not be instantly reactive and thinking like something has happened very worse, or keep on comparing with other people's life, thinking that they are not achieving what they are achieving, or thinking they have some sort of milestones to reach. Reaching the milestones is good, but not with the timelines. Like let's say I'm 30, I should have this. I'm 35, I should have this. These are the reasons that's happening. So how do you evaluate these kind of things, especially for youth? And when I'm saying youth means when most of the abroad students that were my audience or were people that watch my podcast. So most of the people who are coming from India and then start everything again from the beginning, mostly like depressed and lonely as hell.
Wow, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
I think, look, the first thing I would say is that I am not a mental health professional. I'm not a doctor. So I can't really talk from that perspective. I have worked with men quite a lot, and I've just generally worked my own sort of work in that, and I've worked with a lot of people in the emotional realm. So I'll say a couple of things. One is my sense is a lot of the issues come down to expectations, where we feel that, and I was actually talking to someone yesterday about this. Like the pressure we have from our families, the pressure we have that we put on ourselves. I need to be successful. What if I'm a failure? What will people say? What will people think about me? How will I make my ends meet? Like here's, when I left my corporate career, this was, I think, 15 years of sort of, having a lifestyle which was very much 9 to 5, corporate world. When I left my corporate career, I had enough money in my bank account. But for 2 months, I would wake up in panic, thinking, where's my next paycheck gonna come from?
Right.
Or if I'm not making money, then my worst fear was that I'll end up on street. We all have some kind of worst case scenario in our life.
We are going broke and then
we're going broke. I'll be begging on street. Nobody will give me any job. I won't make any money. I won't be able to feed myself. And a lot of that is down to how we define our value.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, I had done a lot of things in my life, like I had moved country, I had a successful career, I had an MBA behind my, in my CV. And even then, I didn't really value myself.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to, the reason I'm saying this is all of that comes down to understanding our own self. Like, where is this pressure coming from?
Mm-hmm.
Why are we allowing ourselves to be in so much pressure?
Right.
What if we can go to our family and friends and say, hey, I'm doing my best? What can we say to ourselves and say, hey, I'm doing best, the best I can? What would it look like if I say I need to be kind and loving to myself here?
Mm-hmm.
We're already putting a lot of pressure on ourselves. What if we take some time out of our life, maybe 15 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, and just say, hey, how can I love myself?
Mm-hmm.
This being who's working so hard, trying to prove everything, what do you want?
What you
Little
exactly.
one?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of it comes down to that kind of self-awareness, asking ourselves that question, giving ourselves a break.
Mm-hmm.
And learning how to love ourselves is where I see a lot of the work. And it's tied into emotional intelligence because that level of self-awareness is the first part of emotional intelligence. You can't become emotional intelligence unless you do that work.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I see. And the second thing I would say is you're talking about youth, and there's a lot of statistics if you look at highly successful people, especially men. If you look at the suicide rate especially in the Western world, majority of men, the suicide comes from men, and most of the men who commit suicide are successful senior managers, or they're successful in their career. But they don't know how to get out of that hamster wheel.
Right.
They've spent their life building a lifestyle. They have responsibilities. They probably have families. And once you get into that hamster wheel, you're like, oh, if I make a decision to get out of this life, everything's going to fall over. So that is another thing where one of the books I co-authored, it's called Being Fine, the other F word. And it's a collection of stories by 13 men and a few other women who worked with men who've gone through a mental health cycle, or they've had some kind of suicide in their family, or they thought of taking their own life at some point. And each and every story comes down to the fact that the way they got to the other side was by sharing how they were feeling with other human beings. Because before that, they thought that they couldn't share if they were feeling down, or if they were feeling sad or depressed. They couldn't share it with anyone.
Anybody.
So that is another thing, human connection, and being able to share how we are feeling authentically, vulnerably. That is what is important, I think, when it comes to mental health.
So do you think having that one friend who don't judge and then just listen to whatever we say is very important, right?
Absolutely.
And I
crucial.
think that's missing as well, right?
Man, I can't tell you how many times I have felt fucked up. And I have a few friends who I just call and say, man, I
This is the problem.
Super fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
And all they do, and I know that with these people, I can call and I won't be judged.
Mm-hmm.
They won't try and fix me. They won't try and give me solutions. All they do is like, oh my God, I hear you, man.
Mm-hmm.
I can feel what you're going through.
Yeah.
You know, they don't try and fix, they don't try and judge.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I can find the solutions. All I need is someone on the other end of the phone or someone sitting across from me who can just relate to what I'm going through. That's all.
Right.
That's actually a really important point because I think in our culture, because we don't have good emotional intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
we don't know how to sit in the discomfort with another human being.
Mm-hmm.
If you're sad, I'm going to try and fix your sadness. Because when you are sad and you tell me you're sad, I can feel your sadness and I'm uncomfortable and I don't want to feel uncomfortable.
So you try to fix it.
So I try and fix it because I don't want to feel uncomfortable.
So, so what are you saying? You should not fix? Or?
You can't fix anyone.
Right.
The only thing you can do is delay something.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing you can do when you're sad is to feel the sadness.
Mm-hmm.
Let the feelings go through all the way.
What about others, friends? What should friends do?
Say again.
What should friends do
Sit
when
with,
you're telling them?
sit with the guy or the girl who is feeling sad or
That's it.
going through something.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't try to correct them or try
You
to...
can't. Have you tried to fix someone?
No.
No, try it.
No.
Try it. I don't think we can. I think maybe
I mean,
you
like,
can give a
obviously,
temporary.
you can't fix... yeah, that's what I'm saying. Temporarily,
Maybe
you can give
a
some sort of
temporary thing
relief,
to
right?
someone,
Yeah, by giving them some sort of talk or like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, try it. To you and all your audience, I would say next time someone comes up with a problem to you, you just sit with them and listen.
Yeah.
Right? And you can ask them, hey, do you want me to listen or do you want me to offer you
Fix it.
something?
Some advice or some kind of thing. Yeah.
And let them dictate if they
What they
just want to be listened or if they want help.
Right. So
Most of the time, people just wants to be heard
Mhm.
and seen.
how important it is to have somebody, like when they're feeling these kind of anxiety, depression, or mental health issues, to reach out to some sort of coach. Is it like, and what can they do them? What can they do to them?
That's an
Nowadays, there's a lot of
interesting
people, right, who advise on career coaches, self-development coach, and then mental health coach, and all this.
One thing I would say is that a coach or even a therapist or any person who says that they can actually fix it for
Something.
you, they're talking bollocks. I would say a coach or a therapist or anyone, a friend, a mentor,
Yeah.
what these people are good at is point to your blind spots. You know, like you have experience, we all have experience, and we can see certain things, and there are certain blind spots we have, you know. And what a good coach can do is point to your blind spot and say, hey, do you see that?
You have this,
I
yeah.
see this. Do you see that? What other things that coaches or therapists and other people can do is bring their own maybe experience and knowledge and say, hey, have you thought about this? Have you looked at your life from this angle? Have you looked at this issue from this angle?
Right.
So they give you that extra sort of maybe, and also they provide you a place where you can safely be seen and heard. But that's really the job of a coach, is not necessarily to fix, but to give you
make you
a
aware
blind-
or...
It's the way I say it is like, you fell into a black hole. You know, what do you call it? The hole on the streets. What do you call it?
Path hole.
Path hole. Yeah. You fall in there. You're walking and you fall in there, right?
Yeah.
What a lot of people do, they would go and like give them something to try and pull them out.
Yeah.
What a good coach will do is that the coach will get in the hole with you and then they will show you how to get out
Come
of
out
that
of it.
hole.
Yeah.
Enough time that you can learn to get out of that hole by yourself.
Right.
And that is what a good coach.
Give me one case of, one example, a case where, people come up with some sort of problem and you transform them. I mean, not transform them, but try to make them fix and try to make them realize that this is what you are, like, and, how the things happen and everything.
You mean a real
Especially,
life example of
one
something?
successful man, take one successful man who has good money and, sort of good job and, like, good in terms of all, but at the end of the day, reach out to you and say that, I have this problem, try to missing something.
That's a good question. I'm thinking about a good example. What would be
I'm asking you a
relevant?
testimonial.
What would be relevant? Well, I'll give you an example of someone I've been coaching in India.
Yeah,
Really great guy.
yeah.
He has his own company.
Mm-hmm.
And he's in mid-30s.
Yeah,
Like for 10, 12 years, he has built a very successful business.
mm-hmm.
Ticked all the boxes. He has fame. And then he got to a point where it's like, oh, wow, I have everything, but I'm not in a relationship.
Right.
And I'm feeling, I don't know what to do next.
Mm-hmm.
So feeling stuck, not being in a relationship. And one of the things that when we worked together on all the things, I talked about the 4 areas.
Yeah,
But one of the things that came out was the motivation he had when he was setting up the business
yeah.
had changed,
Right.
right? Because when you're starting your career, one of the biggest motivations people have is to try and prove themselves to the world.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be somebody in this world, right?
People recognize about it.
And
Yeah.
then once you achieved a lot, you get to a point where that doesn't work anymore. You have nothing else to prove to the world.
Yeah.
And that can happen very quickly these
Right.
days
Mhm.
because making money is not that hard. It used to be much harder before, I think. So a big thing with him was to make him realize or to see what is the motivation going forward.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one thing. And the second part of it was like in his relationship, what happens, I think, is that we start to bring in the rules that we have for work in our relationships as well. So we say that the rules of production, which is what we use in work,
Yeah.
are 180-degree different from the rules of connection or relationship.
Right. Yeah.
So for example, when you're working, you want to be efficient.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be on time. You want answers. You go from A to B, right? But in relationship, that doesn't work. Relationship is about connection. Relationship is about presence.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about efficiency. It's totally the opposite.
Right.
You connect with someone and you lose time.
Mm-hmm.
So there are certain rules in that way that we apply in work. But what happens is because we have lost the art of connection, we start to bring in the same rules in our relationship as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that was another big area where I worked with him to
Fix
to
it.
see that how he can learn the rules of connection again and start to apply. And then within 6 months, he got married.
Okay.
Yeah,
Now he's good, happy. And then-
I think so. I haven't spoken to him for a while.
Right. It was great talking to you, Kapil. It was a pleasure. I
Yeah,
learned a lot of
it's been
things.
amazing.
Yeah, I learned a lot of things, and I hope people who are watching can take a lot of things. And then, yeah, great talking to you, mate.
Yeah.